What's up, everybody? Jim Cavale here, and I am happy to not only be joined by my co-host Shannon Terry, but my good friend Craig Young, who just so happens to have a son doing some things in college football and just so happens to know a little bit about NIL. So we're going to talk all about that. And Craig, so happy you took the time to join us today in our Birmingham studios. I'm going to send it over to Nashville to Shannon and get us started here in this awesome interview.
Appreciate you, Jim. Craig, thank you so much for being here today. Let's just lay the groundwork right from the start here and just tell us general feelings from a college athlete. What's your perspective just generally on NIL?
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be here and to talk about this. I know this can be a complex subject. My general feeling about NIL generally is I think it is a good thing. I don't think it's the boogeyman. I don't think it's this scary thing that's going to destroy the fabric of college football and all those things. So I think it's an opportunity for athletes to be compensated for their name, image, and likeness, which frankly has been a long time coming. And there's a lot of people who have profited from athletics and from sports, from administrators to coaches, and I have absolutely no problem with that. I feel like whatever the market bears, then that should be fair from everyone. However, I think there needs to be some tweaks, some guardrails, some oversight, some education that's needed. But I think that it's in keeping of what we've all been taught, what a free market society should be.
So in that vein, there are only 13 or 14 states it's allowed at the high school level. What's your perspective? Go back a few years. With, say, Bryce in high school. Do you think that same luxury should be afforded for high school kids, or do you think just at the college level?
That's a great question. I hesitate to. That's a great question. I think I will answer it like this. If you're a child actor or a child pianist and you have a gift and a skill in any other state, you would be compensated for that. And I think a high school athlete who his skills, his profile, his work is being able to garner that attention. Again, I feel that we live in a society where we compensate and for the ability to have partnerships, for the ability to make money. So I don't think that if we have it in California or if we have it in certain states, then we should have it in those states, or that it should be uniform for all states. Because I think at the end of the day, it's oversight. Now, my hesitation and my pause for that was not because of NIL and the concept of compensating athletes in high school. My pause was the cottage industry that could be manifest by that, where we're having people who sometimes don't have the athlete's best interests at heart, targeting families and young kids at middle schools and all that stuff because they see the potential NIL deals. So those are the things that give me pause. However, generally speaking, I don't have an issue with NIL in high school.
Yeah, Craig, I think the reality is if you're already thinking about your brand in high school, you're getting yourself ready for college. NIL is already live in college today, right? And so there were a lot of things that you did and how you and Bryce strategized preparation for going to a school like Alabama that have helped him really have an NIL business that's successful, but still helps him keep the main thing. Just talk about that strategy, how you came, to that foundation, and just help the listeners understand that, football is still number one.
Absolutely. So before you can have a brand, you have to have a product that performs or that excels to the point that a brand wants to partner with. So a lot of times people are more focused on the brand than the substance that would lead people to want to partner with your brand. So what I mean by that was, for us, it was never about let's create a brand. What it was about was, let's be really good at football. Let's be really good at our craft. And then as parents, it was about, let's really be the best parents that we can be, and let's really try to instill the best values we can. And we're not perfect. We're not perfect people. We're perfect parents. But our object was, our main goal was to try to be the best parents we can be and raise the best child we can be, and surround them with values. And for us, it was Christian values, but also surround them with the best coaching. And then from there, if the athletics takes care of themselves and you excel to a point that you are performing at a high level and you get some attention, then it's a natural transition. You don't have to create anything. It's already there. The foundation's already there. And that's kind of what happened with us. And also what made our situation a little bit easier was, for us, and this isn't everybody's situation, I understand that, but for us, we were blessed to be able to play on teams that are already established brands in themselves. Youth football, we played at a high-level travel youth program, the IE Ducks. High school, we played at Mater Dei. And then here in Alabama, you play, it's Alabama. So at those points, if you perform well, all eyes are kind of on you anyway, and it helps to push your brand forward. But we didn't really have this big branding design. So it was just about be a great person and perform, and then I think those things kind of fall in place.
We're one of the things that when Jim and I said we want to do this podcast, we really wanted to target, and give as much, information as we could to athletes. And the one thing that we would love to know is, there are so many companies, there are so many people out there looking to do things for athletes. And in the case with Bryce Young, so many different opportunities. How in the heck do you guys screen everything that comes in, all the inbound stuff? Because when it becomes a distraction, or when,
Absolutely.
Ill intent starts playing, how, and I know we've got a
Absolutely.
good situation here, but how do you guys screen for that? And what advice would you give other parents, in this same situation?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, my advice would be, do not be in a hurry. And oftentimes in relationships, and when people who come and talk to you about, I can be a marketing representative, or I can be someone, you really need to vet who is involved with your athlete. Secondarily, like anything, like any company, any corporation, you need to have a board. You need to have a trusted set of advisors, trusted set of people that you can bounce ideas off of, you feel have your family's best interest in part. And then also ask a lot of questions. If anyone tells you that they're the expert on NIL or expert on anything, NIL is changing all the time. So you always want to make sure that you ask questions, and whoever you get involved with, do the research behind them. And then also have fundamental values. Have your non-compromisables. What are you about? What is your family about? Where do you want to go? What are some of the things that you value? What are some of the opportunities that you value? What do you want to give back to the community? What do you want people to know about you and your family and your son or daughter? Have those, and then make sure that everyone that you let in your circle is aligned with your core fundamentals and values. And then also, one of the most amazing words in this is no. You got to be able to say no. You got to be able to say no and wait for the best opportunity, because sometimes there's a lot of power in that. When you stand for something and maybe it's a great opportunity, but that's not aligned, then we say no, and then you start building integrity, and you start building that respect. So for us, those are kind of the values, because we've turned down more opportunities, especially in NIL, than we've accepted, because for us it can't just be about accumulation of deals and money, because that's not what we got into this for.
Yeah, Craig, I think from a regulatory standpoint, when you look at where NIL was when this thing started out of nowhere a little over a year ago, to where we are today, there's states like Alabama who had a law for NIL back then, and today. That law has been repealed. There's other states who've passed new laws or amended their laws. How much do you keep up with the regulatory side of NIL? Obviously, collectives have emerged as a method for student athletes to be able to monetize their NIL. That didn't exist at the beginning. How do you keep up with all this stuff?
I keep up with it more than you would think because in the position that we are, I get asked a lot by other parents of elite athletes or even other college athletes because I think we've done some things pretty well in NIL. So I'm always there to help. So I kind of keep abreast of what's going on. The landscape is changing, and then for us, our experience with the NIL is a little bit different because when we made our decision to go to Alabama, NIL was not in the picture at all, nor was a collective or anything. It was strictly about what school do we feel would education also prepare them the best to compete and to potentially play at a higher level. That was it. Now, when you make decisions, and there's no judgment in this, but when you make these decisions, NIL and collectives and all that stuff are now part of decisions on where young men are going to attend school. So with that, I've had a lot of questions and answers about that. So I do keep abreast of what's going on.
Craig, that's exactly what I was about to ask you. You know, the quarterback dominoes in recruiting. You know, one falls and they all kind of start falling. What advice do you give these, you know, say your top 200 kids when looking at schools? How much should NIL play in that? I mean, I know that's a little bit of a controversial. There's so many factors that go into, you know, why an athlete chooses a school. Where does NIL sit in that in your mind for the elites?
That is a fantastic question. I'm glad you asked that. I'm not going to sit here and be in judgment and say, hey, if NIL is the number one reason why you're there, because every family has circumstances. We don't know what that means, and there's all kinds of different motivations. There's intrinsic motivation, there's financial motivation, there's all these things. So I'm not here to say which one's right or wrong. With that said, what my advice would be is like, one, when you're picking a school, what are your goals? If your goal is to develop a career that's going to potentially take you to the higher level, then the NIL money that you may be making or could make, though substantial, would pale into comparison of what an NFL contract would be, especially for quarterback career. So don't lose sight of the long-term goal. Or say like if you want to go to school and it provides you a great education and you meet great alumni and it sets you up to have an amazing life after school where you can potentially do very well. Don't lose sight of that over what the collective package would be. So my thing is looking at it holistically. Yes, I mean, obviously we live in a world where money matters. So if the NIL is a part of your decision tree, your decision pie, that's fine. But at the end of the day, you want to go someplace where you're going to be developed as a person. You're going to be developed as an athlete, developed as a student athlete, and then you want to be someplace where you're going to be on the field and compete. And also going to be a place where you have a great relationship with your position coach, your offensive coordinator. So don't lose sight of those things when it comes to NIL, because I think those things should still be the most and the fundamental things. And if all things are equal, I would go to the place where better coaching, better chance to get on the field, better competition, better schedule, and all that stuff. So that would be my answer, how I would attack it.
And I think once again, you know, that goes back to keeping the main thing the main thing. But for a lot of athletes, that might be tough. They might not have a pro career ahead of them. This may be the most they're going to be able to really create an income for themselves with football, whether or not they even know that. You know, there's different levels of demand. For Bryce, there's such a high level of demand. You talked about turning down more deals than you've done. It can also play into pressure. There's a lot of pressure already to be great on the field, you know, win a national championship. How do you make sure you don't do so much NIL that now you have pressure tied to your NIL deals that only creates more pressure. How do you once again keep these things divided, make it a complementary thing, NIL a complementary thing to this already high pressure role of being the quarterback at Alabama?
Another great question. One, just to be really honest with you, if you're the quarterback at a major Power Five, you're Alabama, Ohio State, Oklahoma, SC, Georgia, going on. The pressure's there no matter what. I mean, NIL deal notwithstanding, I mean, the pressure and the expectations are off the charts. So that kind of comes territory. And a lot of these quarterbacks, especially the newer ones, and Shannon, I know you know this, have been an elite 7-on-7s, have their own YouTube channels, have this huge social media following, and so they're well known now, and they're used to the pressure at an early age. So the NIL is almost a natural transition. But however, I think what's more appropriate is how do you make sure NIL does not negatively impact performance? And I think that's really what we're after. And I think to answer that question, you make sure that the main thing is the main thing. You make sure that you're scheduled and that an NIL or a sponsorship opportunity never ever conflicts with anything having to do with football or academics. And then also you want to make sure that you're not doing anything that takes away from the team or puts the team in a negative light. And then also you just want to make sure that you're a great teammate and that you're that everybody around the building knows who you are, that you're that CEO of the company. And then and I think when that happens and you're doing the right things, then if you have a negative performance or if something goes wrong, it's less about what the NIL was versus just taking for what it was. It's a bad game, bad day. But if you make sure you do those things, and NIL is never viewed as a distraction or something that you put in before the team, then you're fine. I don't think that it adds. I honestly don't think it adds any more pressure.
You know how in professional sports they always say the contract year is the best performing year. Do you think there's a chance? I mean, we know the benefits of NIL, financial literacy, and and things of that nature. But do you think possibly you're going to see better performances because kids are a little more dialed in? I mean, there's another reason to perform on the field actually.
That is, I've never thought about that. I think the players that would perform well and that would garner NIL contracts would kind of perform well anyway, to be honest with you. I think that I don't think that when players are out there making the field, and I know to talk to Bryce, like he's not, I got to ball out so I can get my NIL numbers up, so I can get some more deals. The athletes that I've been around, it's just not really wired that. I think they know. That it is that potentially a byproduct of performing well and having it would be maybe some more NIL opportunities. But I don't know if that would be a primary motivator for a lot of the college athletes. Because I think when you're at that level and performing at that level, there's a lot of pride. There's a lot of competitive nature, and I think that wins out. And then I think the performance, as rightfully is rewarded because of that.
Craig, there's really two camps when it comes to how much media coverage NIL deals should get. There's one camp that says, all this data should be public and, it can help us value the market better. And, obviously transactions have to be reported to compliance as part of just about every NIL policy at every school. Then there's this other camp saying, hey, when pro athletes or celebrities do something with their name, image, and likeness, like it's FERPA protected, like they don't have to report it to anybody. We don't know what Aaron Rodgers' deal is with State Farm. Like that's his info for him. Like, what's your thoughts on media coverage and just data sharing in general when it comes to NIL deals at the college level?
I understand the curiosity because this is new. This is new. This is a paradigm shift, and it's something that gets people excited, and a lot of people have manipulated for different ways. I do think that I kind of am on the camp that I think the numbers are not as significant. that not necessarily. Now the partnership, I think that's fine. I think that partnership is being, if a player gets a partnership with another brand and that's advertised, I think that's fine. I think that's what the brands want. The brands don't mind the publicity, and for the players and the families, they don't mind that. And let's be frank, the universities don't mind it, because that can sometimes be a recruiting tool. Like, look what our players are doing as when they come here. So I think a lot of people get secondary benefits from that, but I just don't think that really the numbers are and how much someone's getting and all that stuff. That part, I don't know if that's necessary, but I don't feel strongly either way. Because I can see both sides of it. So I'm just wondering if what will be like 5 years from now. After kind of this dies down and becomes more commonplace, will the interest be there as much?
Craig,
and I guess that's a question for you guys.
When Jim said that you were going to be our guest, I got to admit, I was excited. I started writing down all these questions that had nothing to do with NIL. So I have 2 older children, but I have another bite at the apple because I have a 2nd and 3rd grader, 2 boys. You and your wife have done an amazing job parenting. And so I want to turn this for a hot minute and ask some parenting questions of young athletes, okay? First thing, just real simple, share your playbook, on how to raise, how to mentor, really young athletes. We're talking the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, pre-high school. You guys were just, y'all knocked it out of the park, and that's been well documented. Share with our listeners, some of the things that you did that worked well. We'd love to hear them.
Okay, first and foremost, and this is easier said than done, but you really have to, this is important. Your young athlete has to know that they are unconditionally loved, regardless of results. And that's easier said than done. And I've heard parents say, of course. But then after a game and there's a result that they don't like, in that car, that kid doesn't feel that love. So the young athlete has to feel that they are unconditionally loved, irrespective of result. Because what that does is that, because sometimes when they're so caught up on the result, it limits them, and they're less inclined to take risks. And that means I'm out there playing, and maybe I won't make this throw, maybe I won't shoot this shot, maybe because if it doesn't work out, I'm gonna yell at my coach and I'm gonna yell at my dad or mom, and that limits me. Because as a young athlete, that's when you want them to make the mistakes. That's when you want outside of the box. That's when you want them to try things. But oftentimes we're overcoaching and overanalyzing, and it paralyzes them.
How does that change, as they get older? When you're taking a little bit of a back seat as a parent, sophomore, junior year in high school. What are some things that you guys did, or some things you did wrong, in that process?
Shoot, how much time do you have for the things I did wrong? That's a whole other podcast. But at a certain point, especially when Bryce kind of came to his sophomore year, it can't really be about you pushing your expectations and living vicariously, or kind of like trying to will them into doing something that they don't want to do. At this point, it has to be their decision and their love for their sport. And then from there, it becomes more of a partnership. Okay, what can we do to get better? How can I help you to get better? Let's process. Let's talk about the game. Let's talk about our plan. Let's talk about what you want to do moving forward. How can we get you there? More collaborative, and then also having that dialogue with the coaches. And if you have trainers or anything that's involved, having everyone on the same page about what is the direction and what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish. That's really, really important. And also as a parent, and here's the one that hurts. There's a bunch of them. You have to be okay with feedback, and not just the feedback that you want, because you can't get better if you don't really embrace the things that you need to improve on. And if someone tells you that your kid needs to improve and you're automatically defensive and then you're ready to attack the coach, then you're using the opportunity to get better.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of a catch-22 though, right? Because you talk about how serious and advanced some of the brands that you've been able to see Bryce play for were, both the travel team you mentioned, and then of course Mater Dei. How do you balance how serious it is, especially nowadays, especially down here where we are, Craig, Alabama, but out in California where you are, it's very serious at a very young age. So how do you balance these things where results do matter, but at the same time, you're loved unconditionally? And if you want to shorten the gap of perfection, here's how you work and do it. Like, how do you kind of work through that?
Because you have to compartmentalize, and there's times to be serious. Like when it's game time, that's time to be serious. When it's time to train, that's time to be serious. When it's time to go to the film room, that's time to be serious. When that is over, when those games are over, then there's time. Then that's where the balance comes in. We talk about the result. We talked about what happened. We talked about what needs to be better. And then now let's go watch a movie. Now let's go watch another sport. Now let's go to dinner. Now let's go to your little brother, your little sister's game. Now let's talk about homework, or let's talk about what's going on in the world. Like making sure that they know that the totality of your experience with them just doesn't revolve around that sport. And then from there, being okay with where your young adult is at. There's different levels, and everybody's not going to play at Alabama. Everybody's not going to play at the SEC. And I think a lot of times those, where that seriousness and that angst comes from? It comes from expectations that are unrealized. And sometimes those expectations are the parents' expectations that are projected on the kid. So you want to make sure that what you're expecting is in line with where your kid is at and where your youngster's athletic ability is. And I think that's where the disconnect is.
So I guess as we're wrapping up here, just kind of one off-topic question. Bryce obviously had an amazing year last year. How do you think he's developed from last year's experience? And what's different? What are we going to see in his game? What did he learn from last year?
What I'm so proud of for him was the way he attacked this offseason. And obviously he's always been a hard worker, and he's always been focused and dedicated. But I'm going to tell you guys a little story. He's probably not going to be mad if I tell you the story. So during that little break, we kind of scheduled a family. It was like a surprise. We scheduled this family vacation. We were going to go to Hawaii, and it was supposed to be this time where we were going to do something just to relax as a family. And Bryce was like, "Love you guys and I appreciate it. Not going." I was like, "What do you mean you're not going?" I said, "It's just a couple of days." It's like, "Well, I have my quarterback coach. I have a workout. I have this, and I'm not going to miss a day of workout this off season. So you guys go ahead, send me pictures. I'm staying." And that is how he attacked this off season. We talk about NIL. We talk about he has some resources and all that stuff. None of that. All he did was dedicated himself to training in the off season, and he also dedicated himself to being a more of a vocal leader, but vocal in the way not yelling, but more of a vocal leader where you're really communicating the message and really communicating the expectations and holding players accountable and also holding himself accountable. And then just the way he threw the ball this offseason and gained some weight and all those things. So he's done everything that he could do to get himself ready for this offseason. So I'm very, very excited. And I can't wait. And I think the fans are going to be ready. Alabama supporters are going to be very excited with the season.
It's outstanding. Trent Dilfer, who we had on last week, had some incredible things to say about him and some of the work that he's done. So great story.
Love Trent. Love the Elite 11 guys. Big part of his development.
Yeah. Unbelievable knowledge you dropped with us today. the don't hurry, the trust advisors, the goal, the lined. I mean, you really shared some really good stuff, and we really appreciate you telling us, how you guys did it. And that we're all learning, and that's what this platform's all about.
It's my pleasure to be here. Jim's a great friend of mine, and means a lot to our family. And like I told you, Shannon, been a big fan in the way that On3 is developing. You guys are doing great work, so thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot, Craig.
No problem. Appreciate it.
We appreciate you tuning in to the LeverUP podcast, available right now on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So make sure you subscribe, and make sure you subscribe to both the On3 and Influencer YouTube channels, where you can catch all the video content, cut-ups, mashups from all of the LeverUP podcasts. And of course, follow us on Twitter and Instagram as well at On3 and at Influencer. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and stay tuned for more great guests to come on the LeverUP podcast.